Hey, it's Joel Peters, and today we're going to go ahead and read something. As it's no longer spooky season, I'm a big fan of Twin Peaks. My wife and I did a first viewing of the entire series, including Fire Walk with Me, last month. And it was a little bit before my birthday. We finished The Return, and I had enough time to really just soak it in, think about it, watch lots of fan theories and so forth. And I thought, as a return to YouTube type of video, this is my YouTube channel, makes no sense at all, but we're going to go ahead and read all of Twin Peaks, The Final Dossier. This is by Mark Frost. This is a novel. My dog is in the room. Oh, he left. So we're going to read it. Yes, that's all I'm going to be doing today in this video. My microphone's right here. Basically, just going to read through it. Acknowledgements. This is the 7th and last book I've created with the support, counsel, and unerring human intelligence of the late Ed Victor, my literary agent and good friend for 30 years. A line of letters, literature, and culture. There's scarcely a publishing professional on 2 continents who has not benefited in some way from Ed's presence, influence, or companionship in their lives. Those of us fortunate enough to have been in his clients will tell you those effects were never less than profound. For myself, I cannot imagine the journey I've followed, from aspiring writer to author, taking place without him. ChatGPT! No, I'm kidding. It has M dashes, which are pretty common in writing. And I want to put this before I begin this video fully. M dashes in ChatGPT specifically were because it was picked up from fan fiction. So lots of different fan fiction over the years was all collected into the machine learning algorithm and what they learned, scrape data from. And that's why M dashes are common. They're not as common with regular writing, but that's why they were common, because all of that fan fiction was scraped. Fun fact for you if you didn't know that. There are, as always, many to thank for their help with this volume, but this once, in the wake of Ed's stunning absence, I deferred those expressions of gratitude and asked Bob Miller, Colin Dickerman, Will Schwalbe, Paul Keppel, Marlena Bittner, and James Malia to join me in saluting a man who helped our business find its better self, and by doing so, made this harsh world a kinder and more civilized place. All right, with that out of the way, it starts with a blue rose, it looks like. Twin Peaks, The Final Dossier. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Yes, I'm literally reading this, so I hope you understand. Okay, let's begin. Inter-Office Memorandum. Date, September 6, 2017. From Tamara Preston, Special Agent, to Gordon Cole, Deputy Director. Dear Director Cole, pursuant to your directive to me upon the completion of my investigation into the archivist dossier last year, I hereby submit my subsequent follow-up report. That archive, which ended abruptly on March 28, 1989 with the major sudden disappearance and presumed death, left us with many possible avenues of investigation. As you suggested to me at the time, I have since directed my own investigation down every rabbit hole and up every apple tree in search of answers. To state it more plainly, I'm the archivist now. Now, unlike the previous dossier, where for the most part all documents were presented to us in their entirety per Bureau standards, here I have taken the time to condense the relevant content I found into an uninterrupted narrative. As you also requested, I began this project in the town of Twin Peaks itself. As you also requested, I began this project in the town of Twin Peaks itself by attempting to bring you up to date on the stories of many of the town's residents, many of whom you yourself know personally over the intervening decades. I learned much that was surprising. Your words, "These woods are full of secrets," come immediately to mind as a distinct understatement, and many other things reflecting the startling rate of change in any community. Small or large, faces over the course of a quarter century of recorded history. The pace of change is extremely hard to perceive at close range. It's virtually invisible day to day, but viewed from a distance, it moves like lightning. The trials and trivialities of daily life, I've concluded, act on the mind as a kind of local anesthetic, numbing us to the relentless passage and ravages of time. I've also learned, a humbling admission to be sure, to view this effect as a kind of mercy. Wow. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Classified, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Date, 9/6/2017. So September 6, 2017, I believe. Or it's June 9th, 2017. The Final Dossier, submitted by Preston Tamara. My conclusions, so this is a synopsis of facts. My conclusions and takeaways from this part of the journey, which you also requested of me, I have included from time to time when they apply throughout the document, rather than offering them as a preamble, as I don't want to shade your perceptions prior to your first read. On a personal level, I will share with you, however, that regardless of the cost to my innocence or naivety regarding these truths of the human condition, which I now freely acknowledge at the start was considerable, I emerge from this experience grateful for the wisdom it has given me, and stronger of mind for the hard lessons learned. May I also state that your faith in me to undertake this task and the opportunity you've provided me to contribute to the collective work that still lies ahead of us remains one of the authentic blessings of my life. I only hope that, in whatever small way I can, I'm able to apply my shoulder to that wheel for as long as time and fate allows. Most respectfully yours, Tamara Preston, Field Agent, Blue Rose Task Force. And this is classified, and there's a signature by her. We're about 7 minutes into this. All right, the addendum. And again, it says Federal Bureau of Investigation classified. This first document is, as you'll quickly learn, not exactly a traditional autopsy report. I assume this was made accessible to you at the time of incident as a Blue Rose file, but since it is not passed along through traditional Bureau channels and hardly embraces standard forensic formatting, I'm including it in the pursuit of thoroughness. Calhoun Memorial Hospital Autopsy Report, Examination Ref number 1989-0401, Johnson Leo Abel. I didn't know his name was Abel. Middle. On the morning of April 1st, 1989, an autopsy was completed on the body of Leo Abel Johnson. Visible injuries, 5 gunshot wounds, numerous spider bites, electrical burns, bruises, and cigarette burns. Internal injuries, bullet lodged near spine, damage to sinus cavity. Oh, wow. Okay. I remember he was shot. Anatomical summary, 5 gunshot wounds to upper thoracic, arachnid bites, tarantula therapisodi. Basically, he's bit by a tarantula, multiple tarantulas. Electrical burn marks, cigarette burns, E, bruising, F, bullet lodged internally near lower lumbar third vertebrae, cause of death, 5 gunshot wounds. Interesting. And then there's a diagram of him where he was taken out. Okay. Special Agent Albert Rosenfield. It's not often I'm tempted to begin one of these by suggesting he made the world a better place by taking an early retirement, but in his case, I'm willing to make an exception. My own interaction with this knuckle-dragger was fleeting, but he left a vivid impression, not unlike the livid marks on his soon-to-be ex-wife's neck as after he nearly strangled her. His entire lifespan could easily be written off as a scathing indictment of our public education system, but to be fair, you'd probably have to go all the way back to the crossroads where Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal went their separate ways and say, Leo's forebears took the path less traveled. So, for starters, it wasn't the spiders that killed him. Whatever evil genius, I'm looking at you, Wyndham Earl, decided to hoist a bag of tarantulas over his head as a dire threat to Leo's health obviously wasted far too much time watching cheesy Vincent Price movies and not nearly enough time studying arachnids. Tarantulas aren't ever fatally venomous, dipshit. They just look scary. I'm going to go out on another limb and conclude that the 5 gunshots to his upper thoracic area had slightly more to do with the late, lamented Johnson's tragic demise. Patterned in a punctilious little circle around his heart, with one to grow on dead center. Unfortunately, aside from the killer, it appears that said spiders were only witnesses. Observations: the 5 9mm slugs were all still in the body he had. Observations: the 5 9mm slugs were all still in the body he had. I'll put it delicately: an excess of mass to help slam on the brakes, and there were no powder burns on his clothes or skin. Ergo, shot from across the room by someone with a low pulse and nifty marksmanship skills. Scuff marks near the door where it appears the shoulder set his feet bureau style. Scuff marks near the door where it appears a shooter set his feet bureau style. Just a working theory, because who the hell knows where he shuffled off to, but all my money is all on our old pal Wyndham Earl. Or Wyndham. Also, circular pattern of electrical burns marks around Leo's neck. A canine shock collar on the floor nearby, size for a St. Bernard. Nice. Leo must have made first-rate slippers. Nice. Leo must have made a first-rate slippers fetcher. Bruising, massive bruising over most of the body, cigarette burns, signs of malnutrition, even traces of birthday cake in his hair. I'm guessing they though these weren't all residue of occupational hazard as a long-haul trucker. Wyndham enjoyed a lot of fun with the poor bastard. On the other hand, the damage to his nasal passages and sinus cavities, which look like the depleted uranium mine, 80% of the cartilage scorched or burned away, appear to be entirely self-inflicted. Like the commercial almost says, things go better with crystal meth. Wait, what? That goes double if you're trying to keep your eyes peeled all night while hauling a load of cheap mattresses from Boise to Bishop. This interested me. Leo also had a bullet lodged near the third vertebrae of his lower lumbar spine. Conclusion: this is an earlier injury from a different weapon, from a 22 caliber, for which he had been treated some weeks earlier at the local hospital. The IC resident's diagnosis from that time noted Leo's also suffering from paralysis of the extremities, but concluded that once surrounding inflammation subsided, he might, and apparently did, recover the use of his limbs, if not his senses. So, you might as well ask, who shot Leo the first time? According to the jacket, meticulously assembled on our hero by, as I charitably refer to them here in the East Rubesville, local law... According to the jacket meticulously assembled on our hero by, as I charitably refer to them here in East Rubesville, local law enforcement, Leo evolved from consumer to trafficker at some point in his sunset years. Going by the peek I took inside his cranium, impairment of moral judgment would have been the least of his symptomatic responses. He clearly suffered a cerebral hemorrhage within his last few weeks of life, but I'll spare you the clinical verbiage. Chief, his brain looks like a dog's breakfast. If your dog liked garbage with his scrambled eggs. With his sudden departure, Leo Johnson left little behind aside from his badly used Corvette. Bought a few months prior to the death was a suspect amount of cash. The truck cab he used for his hauling business, repossessed by the leasing agency post-mortem. A ramshackle bungalow on the outskirts, also repoed by the bank post-mortem, and his young widow, a hash slinger at the Double R Diner, Shelley McCauley Johnson, known to you, I recall, as the girl I'd most like to take to the prom. By the way, forgive the stains on this page. Writing this as I enjoy yet another delicious and oh so flaky chicken pot pie, third night in a row from that same local quarter-star bistro, the greasy spoon you keep raving about with the pie and the coffee. Pardon me, Gordon, but on the whole, to quote Wyndham Claude Duncanfield, I'd rather be in Philadelphia, where you are undoubtedly luxuriating at this very moment in your silk smoking jacket, enjoying a fruity French Bordeaux with another one of your imported nieces. Sorry, trigger warning. Repeated and prolonged proximity to moribund logging community set off my misanthropy. But indulge me for long enough to offer a brief moment of sociological commentary. If the good folks of burgs like these would put down the remote and the beer, or the bong, and stay out of their off-road vehicles and duck blinds on weekends in order to punch the clock on some career counseling or community college, they might have a fighting chance to switch horses when the Turk comes to shutter their 19th century industrial meal ticket. Because the Turk is coming. The world is changing pronto, Chief. And now that the salt of the earth country folk realize they've been left behind, it's going to be a sheer hell playing catch-up. I know, I'm a raging asshole. And speaking of entrepreneurial initiative, here's a no-brainer. Why don't some of these enterprising yokels kickstart a craft brewery here in town? They'd instantly attract an endless stream of thirsty proles, and the only competition is swill. Enough community building for one night. To sum up, Leo Johnson's dead. Having a hard time arguing that the local landscape isn't trending upward because of it. Next case. Save me a glass, you cosmopolitan swell, Albert. P.S. The recent body count from his little criminal corner of town is officially way off the actuarials. Jean Renault, Jack Renault, Leo Johnson, and some other dirtbag drug dealer in the woods whose melodious name escapes me. When I brought these trend up to Sheriff Harry Truman, or as I like to call him, Chatty Cathy, he replied, well, makes my job a whole lot easier. Initial, Albert Rosenfield. Okay, 50 minutes. Here we go. We've now on page, we're on page 23. This next one is about Shelley Johnson. Case file is 008072-0119. Bureau file is Twin Peaks 0118. And this is signed by Preston Tamara, or Tammy Preston. At a glance, Shelley's story reads as depressingly familiar. The only child of a dysfunctional local marriage that ended in early divorce, exasperated by alcoholism and repeated incidents of spousal abuse. Shelley lived with her mother and the split. Shelley lived with her mother after the split. Shelley lived with her mother after the split. Her father fled the state and disappeared, and Shelley left home for good at 17. While her Twin Peaks high school transcripts paint a portrait of a bright and promising student, she dropped out at the end of her junior year when Leo Johnson, 6 years her senior, suddenly careened into her life. My understanding is that you hold a personal fondness for Shelley, Chief, so I'm including a few more details here than I might have otherwise. According to a formal inquest conducted in the aftermath of Leo's death, these facts emerge. A covert relationship between Shelley and Laura Palmer's putative boyfriend Bobby Briggs appears to have overlapped a large percentage of her nearly 2-year marriage to Leo. Corroborated testimony also suggests that this relationship with Bobby during high school predated Leo. Bobby and Shelley were in fact contemporaries who had known each other going all the way back to elementary school. One fellow student vividly recalled this. When Shelley realized Bobby was two-timing her with Laura, she confronted him in an angry public scene that disrupted the junior prom. She stormed out in her prom dress and, as fate would have it, decamped to a local adult venue known by its sign as this Bang Bang Bar, but more colloquially as the Roadhouse. Although she was underage at the time, a laissez-faire attitude toward the serving of underage patrons, it appears she knew the bartender on duty that night, resulted in Shelley drowning a couple beers before Leo Johnson, who had just rolled in from a road trip, intervened to gallantly procure for her a few more potent illicit cocktails. And before the night was over, one thing led to another. Cutting, as they say to the chase, Leo and Shelley obtained the necessary paperwork and appeared before a local justice of the peace exactly 3 weeks later. The justice noted dryly in his remarks that the young couple stated that they were celebrating their 3rd anniversary and tied the knot. You might well ask, what could possibly go wrong? As we now know, everything that could did. Within a few weeks of Leo's passing, let's charitably call this the observation of designated mourning period, Shelley and Bobby began to appear together around town in public places, clearly a couple again, joined in grief most assumed by the deaths of their respective former partners. Again, adding a point, Leo Johnson and Laura Palmer. I would, however, be remiss if I neglected to point out that, according to the case file, these two were also considered and subsequently cleared by law enforcement as prime suspects in Leo Johnson's murder. The emergence of an at-large fugitive Wyndham Earl as a more probable culprit ultimately led investigators to conclude that, while evidence indicated they were far from blameless in Leo Johnson's downfall, Shelley and Bobby were at best not guilty and at worst seen as not likely to be successfully prosecuted. 1 year after Leo's death, almost to the day, perhaps Shelley had learned something from the dictum, marry in haste, repent in leisure. Bobby and Shelley were formally wed during a weekend getaway to Reno. Family did not attend. Their now legal union, within 7 months, timing that seems to have influenced this sudden decision to book a flight to Nevada, produced a daughter, Rebecca Macaulay Briggs. Shelley's estranged mother died that same year at 47, cirrhosis of the liver. But Bobby's mother, Betty, grieving the recent loss of her own husband, stepped up to the plate, devoting herself to providing her son and his new wife a stability they sorely needed for their new family. And, as she had done since the day Shelley began working at the Double R, proprietor Norma Jennings, soon to lose her own hardened criminal husband Hank, with far fewer regrets in a prison shanking, played the role of a surrogate mother that Shelley had always needed. Norma and Betty joined forces to co-sign a loan that allowed Bobby and Shelley to buy their first house. Within a year of Leo's death, when she turned 21, Shelley now had a home, a husband she loved, and a beautiful child, and a supportive circle of friends and customers at a job she adored. As the saying goes, it takes a diner to raise a child. Of all the personal stories I've now surveyed in Twin Peaks, Shelley seems one of the luckiest ones. But then, as you will know, Chief, most stories have more than one act. I'll return to this one and to Deputy Briggs presently. Okay. Again, 9:16:7. All right. Continuing on. Yeah, 9:6:17, sorry. Horns and Haywards. Okay. During the same time frame, something curious and well under the radar occurred one night at the home of one of the town's most beloved citizens and widely admired general practitioner, Dr. Will Hayward. I've assembled the following pieces of information I've been able to collate into a following scenario, which feels like the most reasonable explanation. The event in question appears to have happened on the same day as the explosion in the vault of the Twin Peaks Savings and Loan, which, as you'll remember from the dossier, resulted in the deaths of Pete Martell, Andrew Packard, and the bank's assistant manager, Del Mibler. That evening, the incident's only living survivor, Ben Horn's 18-year-old daughter Audrey, gravely injured in the explosion, was being treated in intensive care at Calhoun Memorial Hospital. A closer examination yielded the following 9 curiosities reported below. First curiosity: also being treated for a serious head injury in the same ER that same night was Audrey's father, Ben Horn. Horn, who had spent most of the day in the hospital at Audrey's bedside, but apparently left sometime after dark, only to return as an urgent care patient a little over an hour later. Second curiosity: the admitting physician, who, it turns out, also drove Ben Horn to the hospital after his injury, was Dr. Will Hayward. The injury, according to Hayward's report, occurred at the Hayward's home, the result of a fall suffered when Horn, quoting the hospital admittance form, slipped on the hearth of a living room fireplace, hitting his head on the hard granite mantle. Hayward goes on to detail that Horn, despondent over his daughter's condition, had come to the house seeking counsel about his daughter's chances for recovery. Why this conversation never took place at the hospital, where both men spent most of their day together, is neither asked nor answered. After rapidly consuming a couple of drinks, served by the doctor himself, Horn complained of feeling lightheaded and moments later collapsed in the front of the Hayward fireplace. The doctor goes on to mention that he and Horn had been speaking privately at the time, so there were no other witnesses. Third curiosity: the only medical file I've been able to obtain from the hospital is brief, almost cursory, and was also written by Dr. Hayward. There is a reference to x-rays being taken, presumably to check for skull fractures, results negative, but I have been unable to find them. There is no mention of any other specific symptoms to support Dr. Hayward's diagnosis that Ben Horn had suffered a grade 2 concussion, and his recommendation that he be held in the hospital overnight for observation. Horn was admitted to a room just down the hallway from the one preoccupied by his injured daughter. With everything else going on in town that day, the bank explosion, Agent Cooper's overnight disappearance, and return, local law enforcement was stretched fairly thin, so it appears that no officials ever questioned the doctor's account of Ben Horn's injury. Fourth curiosity: we now know that this next morning, Doc Hayward accompanied Sheriff Truman to examine Agent Cooper in his room at the Great Northern Hotel, after he returned from a mysterious night spent, exact whereabouts unknown, in the Ghostwood National Forest. While they were in the room, again according to Doc Hayward's subsequent report, Agent Cooper went to the bathroom to brush his teeth, slipped on the bathroom floor, and slammed his head into the mirror over the sink, knocking himself unconscious. Once again, Doc Hayward accompanying his patient to the hospital. This time, Sheriff Truman drove and admitted him with the same diagnosis, a grade 2 concussion. While they were there, according to the hospital's log timeline, Ben Horn was discharged after being examined and cleared for release by the on-call doctor, not Doc Hayward, and was taken home by his brother Jerry. Fifth curiosity: Agent Cooper, according to the available records, spent that day and night in the hospital before checking himself out without receiving medical clearance. The following morning, within 2 days, he would vanish from Twin Peaks and disappear from the view for the next quarter of a century. We also know from a report filed by Sheriff Frank Truman more than 25 years later that at some point that day, while making the rounds, Doc Hayward saw Cooper in the hospital corridor, fully dressed in his usual black suit, exiting the room in the ICU occupied by Audrey Horn. Ooh. Sixth curiosity: 9 months later, almost to the day, Audrey Horn gave birth to her son Richard Horn. The birth certificate states the identity of the father as unknown. Ooh. And if you've seen The Return, you know what happens. Seventh curiosity: within 2 days, Agent Cooper had vanished, and Major Garland Briggs, reportedly the last person in town whom Cooper had visited before his disappearance, had been declared dead after a fire at Listening Post Alpha, high up in the mountains of the Ghostwood Forest. Although the charred corpse found at the scene was too damaged to identify through then relatively nascent DNA technology, the discovery of a few loose teeth which matched Briggs' dental records led to the conclusion that he had indeed died in the fire, the cause of which the subsequent intensive Barrow investigation concluded remains unknown. Eighth curiosity: within 3 months of these Apparently, interrelated events, the following events occurred. After a lifetime spent in the state of Washington, without warning, Doc Hayward abruptly shattered his thriving practice and moved all the way across the country to the town of Middlebury, Vermont. Shortly thereafter, Hayward and his wife Eileen, after 26 years of marriage, filed papers that finalized an uncontested and mutually agreed upon divorce. In that same month, their oldest daughter, Donna, just after graduating with honors from Twin Peaks High, also left town for good, settling in New York City. Her mother, still confined to a wheelchair after a car accident nearly 2 decades earlier, remained in the Hayward's family's Twin Peaks home, where she raised her 2 younger daughters, Harry and Gersten alone. Ninth curiosity. I have identified a steady flow of income, $7,500 or $7,500 USD a month into the bank account of Eileen Hayward. The payments began the month that Doc Hayward left town and persisted until Eileen's death from pneumonia in 2009. These appear to have been direct deposit wire transfers from an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. I have just traced that account to a Shell LLC corporation registered to the Horn Foundation. As of this writing, the foundation's principal, Benjamin Horn, responding through his attorney, has denied my repeated requests for an interview on the subject. Since the filings were all made in accordance with existing law and there is no apparent appearance of a crime or corporate maleficence, DOJ has declined to issue a subpoena to pursue this matter. My feeling, not entirely supported by fact, is that something untoward happened in the Hayward household that night when Benjamin Horn dropped in. The effects of this event seem to have devastated and effectively destroyed one of the family's most admired and respected families. Harriet seems to have suffered the few illest effects. After high school, she studied at the University of Washington, eventually becoming a pediatrician in the Bellevue area, a suburb of Seattle. Gersten I'll return to in a moment. Whew, man, that's a lot. Okay, I'm going to take a break here. My throat is getting to me. There's a lot that goes into this. Arriving in New York City in 1992, Donna Hayward began taking undergraduate classes at Hunter College. She had just turned 18. She supported herself by working as a model, eventually signing with the exclusive Ford modeling agency. All reports indicate that during this time, she cut off all communication with both her father and her mother, exchanging letters and occasional phone calls only with her younger sisters. She similarly cut off contact with all of her former friends in Twin Peaks, with one exception. A few years later, she exchanged 2 letters with Audrey Horn. I learned this from Donna herself, replying by written letter, not email, to my repeated inquiries to her. She was unwilling to share the letters with me or discuss any of their content. As her modeling career advanced, Donna dropped out of Hunter College after her freshman year. The job carried her to various foreign countries, and she worked in Paris, Milan, Monaco, and other fashion meccas. Within the industry, she was considered one of the fresh faces of the 90s. After the somewhat decadent previous decade, a return to a more wholesome all-American look, perhaps best epitomized by Kathy Ireland. To be blunt, Donna had taken a hard left into the fast lane. During this time, she frequently appeared in the gossip and society columns of various New York newspapers, where she was linked romantically with a variety of high-profile men: a soap opera star, a professional tennis player, a nightclub magnate, and a minor and somewhat dissolute scion of European royal family. Near the end of the decade, as she reached her late 20s and her modeling career slowed, Donna married a man nearly 2 decades her senior, the co-founder of a successful .com startup and prominent figure in the New York venture capital community. If anything, this raised her social profile even further, as the couple entertained frequently at their Sutton Place brownstone and their opulent beach house in Southampton. By the way, speaking of brownstones, Lily Allen and David Harbour split, and Lily Allen released a record recently all about her experience with that and why she could not afford the place. It's very good. Just before the turn of the century, at an unspecified charity event on one of these weekends, Donna apparently encountered Lana Budding Milford, the widow of Twin Peaks Post publisher Douglas Milford. Both wearing costume and wide smiles, their photo ran on the society page of the New York Post, while Lana appears to beam. On closer examination, something around the edges of Donna's expression appears fraught with tension and dismay. Whether this encounter had any direct bearing on what happened next is impossible to determine, but Donna's fairy tale New York existence, polo, yachts, helicopters, the whole 9 yards of garish material excess, unraveled shortly thereafter, exposing the reality of a much harsher inner life. 4 years into the marriage, Donna discreetly and at first voluntarily entered rehab for drug and alcohol dependence. This proved to be only the first of Donna's 4 stints in rehab over the next 5 years. The last of which, an involuntary stay at McLean Psychiatric Hospital in Massachusetts, was the result of an intervention. This final episode, in which she was reported missing by her husband, then found 2 days later in the Lower East Side crack house, appears to have been triggered by the death from heart failure of her mother Eileen, with whom Donna had never reconciled, nor, as I can determine, spoken to in the last 17 years since her disappearance, or since her departure from Twin Peaks. Donna did not attend the funeral. Shortly after release from McLean, sober now but shaky, Donna's husband initiated divorce proceedings. Because she had signed an ironclad prenuptial agreement, Donna was awarded only a low 6-figure lump sum and a modest monthly stipend. She soon moved into an apartment in a suburb of New Haven, Connecticut, far from the limelight in which she had been living, where she had rigorously attended the local 12-step meetings and managed to hang on to her sobriety. Approaching 40 and facing an uncertain future, Donna, at this point, reached out to her father, Will Hayward, for the first time in more than 20 years. This contact, it seems, led to their reconciliation. Within a year, Donna had moved to the small college town of Middlebury, Vermont, where Will, now well into his 70s, was still practicing family medicine. Donna moved in with her father and began working as assistant in his practice. Doc Hayward, in the past year, had quietly begun to wind down his daily hours, but says he intends to never fully retire. Donna remains by his side to this day, living a quiet life and very active as a sponsor in the local 12-step community. Although she politely rebuffed all of my attempts to speak to her directly, I've learned she is currently studying to obtain a degree as a nurse practitioner. I should mention that Donna's younger sister, Kirsten, has, if anything, suffered even more obvious ill effects from whatever events tore this family apart. Kirsten was an exceptional child in many regards, a musical prodigy. She performed as a piano soloist in concert venues all across the Northwest while she was still in her early teens. She was also a prodigiously talented musician, prodigiously talented mathematician, taking college-level courses while still a high school freshman. She graduated from high school at 16 and was offered scholarships from a number of prominent universities. Able to speak and read 4 languages fluently, Kirsten has been tested well above genius level in IQ. Throughout her child and teen years, her exceptionalism in so many disciplines appeared to function as a kind of shield for the turbulence and unhappiness that descended on her family. Once she entered Stanford University at 16, however, it quickly became apparent that the energy put into all these high-stress, high-function abilities did not protect her from whatever trauma she had suffered as a child, nor did it prepare her emotionally for the internal demands this more adult world was now placing on her. Damn good. By the middle of her second semester, after exhibiting alarming symptoms of maladaptation to her new circumstances, Kirsten suffered what was diagnosed as a severe nervous collapse and emotional breakdown. By the way, the song's playing right now is Laura Palmer's theme, the instrumental. After 6 weeks of treatment in a Bay Area psychiatric hospital, she was released, withdrew from Stanford, and returned home to Twin Peaks to live with her mother. Kirsten underwent immediate and ongoing psychiatric care, and her health improved. Here's the song, by the way, so you can hear it. I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, just wanted to play that. Kirsten underwent immediate and ongoing psychiatric care, and her health improved, but sadly, her ability to cope with the trials of everyday living did not. Although doctors have prescribed for her a steady course of antidepressants as an ongoing protocol, during this period, Kirsten privately turned to stronger street drugs for comfort, concurrent with the nationwide trend in dependence on opioids and designer synthetic drugs. The death of her mother Eileen in 2009, by removing her protective influence and the social safety net Kirsten had come to depend upon, appeared to derange her even further. This led to her into a series of reckless and chaotic relationships with a number of men and women. The most damaging of these proved to be an off-again, on-again affair with one Stephen Burnett, an unstable career miscreant and low-level drug dealer in the Twin Peaks area, who had in the interim become her primary source for narcotics. This relationship preceded and apparently also overlapped Stephen's marriage to Rebecca Briggs, daughter of Shelley and Bobby Briggs. Now in her early 20s, Becky works at a bakery owned by Norma Jennings in downtown Twin Peaks. A warrant for Stephen Burnett was recently issued as a suspected accomplice in an international drug running operation. He has gone missing. That prominently involved Audrey's son Richard Horn, who is also still at large and wanted on, among other things, a hit-and-run warrant, and a crooked deputy in the Twin Peaks Sheriff's Department, Chad Broxford, who is currently awaiting trial on a variety of charges. The timely intervention of her mother, Shelley, and her father, Deputy Sheriff Bobby Briggs, appears to have spared Becky any lasting legal trouble. But Gersten has not been seen since and is believed to have left the area. I think it's a good place to end for right now, because next up, in the next video, we'll cover Ben and Audrey Horn. It's a long one. Jerry Horn. It's a funny guy. The Double R Diner. That's a long one too. And Annie Blackburn. And then from there, we'll see how the rest we have, because we got some stuff on Windham Earl and quite a bit more. So tune in next time when we continue with this Twin Peaks: The Final Dossier. My name is Joel Peters. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your November and 2025.